And we've got to realize that there are things in our background. The first thing I've got on your notes there is this. It's very important for us to realize that the enemy wants the old you to what? Stay the old you. Remember the natural you? Remember when we said natural was pre-reborn spiritually? And remember what carnal is? Carnal is a spiritual person who lives more naturally than they live spiritually. So we've got this carnal us that's going around, and we're dealing with things in our life that have been very painful for us, like for example, abandonment or abuse or ridicule or criticism or hatred or prejudice or whatever, and emotional abuse. Because we're trying so hard, we start very early on because we have this void in our life that can only be filled with God. We start trying to fill it with very important others in our life. And I'll just tell you that no matter how hard we try to be a good parent, we're never going to meet the needs of our kids. And your parents were never going to completely be able to meet your needs. But see, here's what the devil wants us to stay the old you, and he wants to keep reminding us who he is. But God wants our past to strengthen our future. See, until we get to that point, our past is really a thing that oftentimes weakens us, especially spiritually. God wants our past to strengthen our future. Look at Romans 8, 28 and 29. And if you've been in church world, if you've been a Christian for a long time, this is a verse that you've probably heard, and you've heard it misquoted a lot of times. But look what Paul writes in Romans 8, 28 and 29. He says, we know that God causes everything. Now I want to stop right there. That's where it's often misquoted. We know God did this for a reason. How many times have you heard that? And we just that's our denial thing. We just kind of throw that out there. We know God did that for a reason. But the sentence doesn't stop there. We know that God causes everything to what? To work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose for them. See, God takes all the things that happens in our life. He takes the good things that happen in our life and the bad things. And I'm telling you, the bad things are going to happen because we live in a sinful world and bad things are going to happen. And God allows us to make choices. So there are people in our lives that are going to make bad choices. And all of those things, whether it's illnesses or relationships or whatever the things are that happens in our life, Paul writes that God decided that what He's going to do is He's going to make all of those things work together for the good of who? What's it say? For the good of who? Christians, right? For those who love God and are called according to His purpose for them. See, God has a purpose for you, and here's the neat thing. Whether this sounds morbid or whatever, but whatever bad things have happened in your life and whatever bad things are happening in the future, they're going to be used by God to make you more used for His purpose. You know, when I was growing up, and when I was a young adult, I used to get jealous of the evangelists that used to be prostitutes. And they were such good evangelists now. Man, if I was only a prostitute, I could be as good an evangelist. You know what I'm saying? I remember the guy that was the great youth evangelist that came to our church at First Baptist Church Euless and told the stories about his mom being a prostitute and growing up in the drug world and being shot at all the time and all this stuff. And I thought, man, if my mom was only a prostitute, I could do all kinds of great things for God. But God does. What He does is He takes all those things, and we're going to talk about that and get into that a little bit more. But we stop oftentimes at Romans 8:28 because that's one of those ones that we pull out of our pocket that we can memorize pretty easy and use. But 29 tells us more about our purpose and God's plan for us and the way He molds us. Look what it says. For God knew His people in advance, us, and He chose us to become like what? His Son, so that His Son would be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. See, all the things that happen in our life, they're the things that God's using to make us be more like Jesus, to make us be more holy. And we have to develop that holy attitude. in our life. See, God wants our past to strengthen our future. And the other thing that we need to know that's very important for us to know about Jesus is that Jesus knows pain. Jesus knows pain. You know, when you're at your worst, and I just remember times in my life getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning and going out and kneeling on the back patio and just crying out to God because I didn't want to wake my kids up and not knowing what God was going to do in my life. And why is this so painful? And why is this taking so long? And why can't I get to this next step? And why don't you give me that job? And why are you allowing that person to treat me that way? And when I pray to God, He knows exactly what it feels like. You know, if you don't know the whole story about Jesus, it's not just about the baby being born in the manger. Besides a brutal crucifixion, He lived a pretty brutal 33 years of life before that. Jesus knows pain. And here's what's amazing about Jesus knowing pain. Jesus knows pain so we can relate to real faith. See, Jesus doesn't ask us to do anything that He hasn't already done.